Hi, I'm Eleanor Meyerhofer, a native Californian designer and digital strategist. In October of 1999, a few years after graduating from design school, I flew from San Francisco to Munich with a fistful of Deutschmarks, a dial-up connection, and an extremely vague plan. 20 plus years later, after a 10-year stint at a global agency, freelancing, and launching 2 online businesses, I'm still here. Now I'm talking to other expat business owners to share knowledge, stories, and inspiration for other non-Germans running businesses in Germany. I am here with Ira Ribeiro, and I am going to just launch into it, Ira, and ask you the question I ask everybody who comes onto this podcast, and that is, what is the 2-minute story of how you ended up in Germany?
Well, my story to come to Germany can be longer, but I'll try to shorten it because I graduated in Brazil. I come from Brazil. I lived there until I was 34. And at that time, I was already with a lot of experience in the market there, and I decided to move. I was working the last time in the mining industry, and I was trying to do something that would be better for the future and for myself. And I thought about the renewable energy sector. And then I went to the other side of the world, not to Germany, but I went to Australia to start my life there. I sold my car, I closed my apartment and everything in Brazil, and then I went to Australia. Then after 7 months in Australia, I realized that my path there would take longer than I expected. Also because of the cost of studying there, I had to get my degree recognized and so on. And I did not want to spend that much time. I have friends who had experience of more than 5 years, like trying to get recognized to work in this field there. Then I decided to change again and to find a way to do a master degree, which I did not have at the moment. I was only with an MBA. And then I was looking for alternatives for doing a master of science in this area. And then I found several. I made like a very thorough research because I was considering everywhere almost. Then I ended up finding 2 interesting one in Germany, one in the Netherlands. I was rejected by the German one, but then I was accepted by the Dutch one. And this Dutch master was interesting because it was first semester there. Second semester, I could choose 6 universities in different countries. Germany was also on them, but I chose one specialization, which is the one I did in solar concentrated solar energy. It's like renewable energy with solar technologies. And this was in the south of France. I did my second semester there, and then my third semester should be a master, write my master thesis. And for that reason, I was looking for companies who work in this field, and I found Freiburg. Actually, I already thought the University of Freiburg was interesting and so on, but I did not want to continue in research as I was doing my master work. I wanted to do the research in a company which is like a business focus. And I found out the company I came to do my master thesis with, and then I ended up in Germany for my master thesis. And then after that, I got a job offer, which I accepted because it was aligned to my expectation, and I stayed. The company now filed for insolvency just like this year. And that was, I will come to this story later, but that is the reason why I started my own business after these 7 years working for them.
Wow, that is quite a journey.
Yes.
Okay, I do have 2 follow-up questions. Well, one is just a point. I'm kind of surprised. Okay, well, you didn't go from Australia to Germany, but I would have thought like it would have been super easy in Australia to get your qualifications recognized and all of this, but it was actually easier in Europe, in Holland specifically.
It was easier. Actually, for example, I could do also my master there in Australia. I also applied for another master in Perth. The ones I found, I was in Brisbane when I arrived there, and the master that I found in Brisbane, they were very research oriented. Like you basically would work alone, and then you would, at the end, you would write something about it. And I wanted something which would give more content for me. So this type, I found one in Perth. But then when I compared the cost of the master and living and everything in Australia, I probably know that it's super expensive. Then I made the cost benefit analysis and I said, no, I prefer to choose something else. And it was also at the same time that my dad passed away. in
Mm-hmm.
2016. So then
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, okay, Europe is not that close to Brazil, but it's closer.
Yeah.
In Australia,
Everything's
in Australia,
closer than Australia.
I need at least 2 days, and from
Yeah.
here I can go from morning, arrive in the evening there if
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah. That's far. And then I want to get into the company you founded, but
hmm
can you tell me, like I'm five, what solar thermal energy is or what that means?
Well, solar thermal energy, which is the field that I specialized on, is actually the converting the solar energy into heat, which is actually
Okay.
the most common form of energy that we use. We use it in our showers, in our kitchen, for wash machines, and so on. And the technology is different than the one that is from solar photovoltaic. I also studied for solar photovoltaic. My
Okay.
original idea was to specialize in solar photovoltaic. Also, when I went to Australia, I was thinking about that. But I have a mechanical engineering background, and solar photovoltaic is very electrical engineering related.
Okay.
Then I thought that would be more interesting to focus on thermal energy, which is actually what I do also for the company now, which is also one of the big, well, we call it the elephant in the room, that nobody
Mm-hmm.
sees it, but it's there, like making a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if this is a known statistic, but heat is like half of the energy we use worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And we still focus on electrification, electricity, and so on and so forth, which is a
Mm-hmm.
very important part. But the big part is still being left behind, although the German government and other governments are already taking steps to decarbonize the heat sector. And the heat
Mm-hmm.
sector can be from commercial, from residential, and from industrial sectors. In my case, I decided to focus on industry because it's one of the big markets, and on the other side, there is also lack of know-how and knowledge on this. Like people don't know how to use it or don't know how to implement them. They are very used to the daily business of buying fuel, burning, and producing the product they have in their factory. And changing that is a very challenging task. And I decided that that would be, when I started working in this field, I decided that would be a very good challenge for myself as well, like help this transition on the industrial
Okay.
sector.
So just to clarify, so when you say photovoltaic, I'm not going to pronounce it right, but you mean like solar panels, basically. Anything that's
Solar
like okay.
panels, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay,
And
so
the
we're
difference, just a quick
yeah,
difference,
sure,
like
sure.
solar photovoltaics actually have these panels and it
Mhm.
absorbs the light, basically
Mhm.
speaking, absorbs the light and then converts that in electrons. And these
Mhm.
electrons is what you collect and then you put on the grid or you connect to
Mhm.
your household appliance. What I do and what we do with solar thermal, when I talk about solar thermal, is actually more in the direction of converting these electrons in heat. You can heat up water. You can convert that in steam. You can heat a thermal oil. We convert change the energy not to electricity, but to convert this energy. Actually, you heat up an element. You heat up fluid, specifically speaking, and this fluid can be also air. You heat up the air, and this air is used in a process. That's what, for example, industry uses mostly, like in their daily business. We call it process heat.
Mhm.
And there is a very big demand for decarbonization of the process heat in industry setups. I think they
Okay.
are somehow covered with the electricity. In many cases, they can also have a PPA and buy electricity from somewhere else.
Mhm.
But for decarbonizing the heat, it's challenging because they cannot produce all the energy they need with their own roofs. In many cases, they can't. They
Mhm.
cannot produce biogas in their own backyards, so they have
Mhm.
to find a way. And normally, the combination of that, different technologies or different technology types, is what I propose to do with the company that I'm founded.
And let's talk about that company, Thermodemand. So that's where you come in. And again, let's keep with this tell me like I'm five concept. So what are you offering? How are like you have a technology to do this, like producing a heat to heat an element and make
Yeah,
not
so
electricity.
So what I found out from my experience in the last years working at Industrial Solar is that there is a lack of know-how in this field.
Mm-hmm.
So then I put in my portfolio technical trainings because people don't know. And for example, development organizations, agencies, they also have the the need to qualify more technical people in the countries they are working for understanding, knowing which technologies are available, how to size them, how to propose a solution that's applicable for the country or for the industry in that country. This is part of what I thought in putting my portfolio. But also there is a lack of know-how in how to size those things, like properly speaking. And then we come up with the challenge that, okay, there are, for example, solar thermal technologies. There are maybe 5 different ones. They work with different temperatures, with different types of mirrors or absorber types that can collect the solar energy. Which one is suitable for me? Which conditions do I have to fulfill to fit that? And this energy is always related to the process. So every factory will have a different setup, every factory. Even if they are from the same group of companies, they have a different setup because the buildings are different, they have a different production line. So there's we still try to standardize as much as possible, but there is a very big challenge to make tailored solutions or proposals to these companies. And that's where I come in. I help them to propose the right solution, technologically speaking, and then how to size them to their needs. I don't have their own technology, but I work in partnership with technology providers that have the technology, specific technologies.
Okay.
And then I propose their technologies for this case or for that case, they depend on the application what is suitable. For example, some collector types, if you're talking about solar thermal, some collector types, they have different temperature levels they can reach. And sometimes if the customer needs a very high temperature, this solution is not suitable for them, but I have to work with the other one, which then can provide the right temperature that they need.
Okay.
This is one example. I can maybe add a little bit more that I also found out there is also some requirements for process optimization, everything related to process heat, process optimization. I added that to my portfolio as well. And in some cases, I would work on a commission basis based on the product that I'm trying to sell that is suitable for this application. In some cases, there will be studies, technical economic feasibility studies that will be done, and then I get the payment from the technical study that will be provided. For trainings, I'm commissioned from different agents, and then I get the commission from the agent as well.
Okay. So let me see if I understood this correctly. So in the first kind of prong is you're essentially doing consulting. Like if I'm Jane,
it's consulting,
factory owner, and say I have a ceramics factory, let's say, and I want to use like sustainable heat, and it's going to be really hot, and you come in and say, okay, Jane, I see you need like an oven with, I don't know, 5,000 degrees. No idea what I'm talking about. And you say, okay, you need this mirror thing and this other widget, and we put all those together, and that will generate the heat you need, and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of what you do. Yeah. And then you also have relationships with these vendors that make these
products,
these technical products. And then you also get a commission from those if it's the right fit.
If it's implemented, yes.
Yeah. And then you do the feasibility studies, or you?
I do the feasibility studies. Okay. Yes. So then portfolio, I structured it in like 6 services at the last version. The one is the project development. In project development, I mean to understand the needs from the client and propose a solution and try to close the project with them. And then closing the project means like signing the contract for implementation. And then in that case is when I get the commission from the solution that is being proposed. There is the one that is the feasibility study, which is the one that I just mentioned. They're not clear whether this solution is suitable for them. We have to spend time engineering or pre-engineering that. And then we made this study analyzing the implementation, the integration is one very important point, how to integrate that works seamlessly with the other heat sources they have. Normally, we are talking about hybrid systems. That means we are not putting a standalone, like not buying a car and selling the old car. We have to work with the old and new system together in most cases. Then I added the project management, which is also part of my background and my formation, my graduation as well. The project management, if the project is implemented, I can be commissioned to manage the project on behalf of the client or on behalf of the technology provider or depends on who has the needs. The technical trainings I mentioned to you, which is
Right,
then
right.
focused on specific markets. I would not offer that for everyone. And there is then the two last ones, which one is the market studies. Market
Mm-hmm.
studies means if, for example, an agency needs to know how would be the implementation of renewable heat technologies in country A, I help them
Mm-hmm.
to strategize how would be that, how to be that step, how big is the market, and so on and so forth. And the last one is the process optimization, which I already previously commented, is then like looking at some specific processes, touching more or less the process by like making a solution, a proposal, how to optimize that process that you can reduce losses or reduce energy use, and so on.
Okay. So, Thermodemand, is this essentially like you as a consultant, or are you starting it as like a GmbH? Are you gay with employees,
Yeah,
or is it all you right now?
I I I thought about founding a
Mm-hmm.
UG, which is they call it in Germany, the limited
Yeah.
liability
Yeah.
with no minimum capital. But the bureaucracy is quite a lot to do this alone. And I thought about starting this alone now, and next year
Mm-hmm.
then I will get bigger and then get
Mm-hmm.
more people on board. My objective is in the next 2 years to then change to a GmbH,
Mm-hmm.
because also as you know, like Einzelunternehmer, as I am at the moment with my
Mm-hmm.
company, the liability lays on all my assets, and I want
Mm-hmm.
to reduce that for the future, especially if I get bigger projects or I have more
Right.
projects in parallel. But I started with Einzelunternehmer because of the bureaucracy. We talk about this later. I
Yeah.
saw here some questions.
Yeah. But wait, so UG is not Einzelunternehmer.
No, no. UG
So
is like
okay.
similar to GmbH. They call it in Germany Mini
The mini
GmbH.
GmbH. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was like easy to set up, but it's still a lot
It's
of
easier. It's easier, but you still have to do, for example, you have to handle register. You have to do it as well.
okay. Okay.
You have to retain part of your gains every year to build
Right,
up the
right. I've read
capital
that.
until you reach up the 25,000, which is the minimum for GmbH, for example. There are those conditions.
Okay, that's right. That's right. I think I know that. And Einzelunternehmer, sorry, but what's the like letter form of that? Is there
That
like
is
a
that
yeah.
is like a solo proprietorship.
Okay, so it is that. So
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I am
yeah,
too. Okay, I
yeah,
didn't know if
yeah,
it was like
yeah,
another
yeah.
thing. And I hear new ones all the
No,
time.
no,
So,
no. Like
okay.
people can like sometimes they can the differentiation between them is very thin, like how to say that, like it's very minimum. I cannot really tell. For example, if you start as a Freiberufler, depends on the amount of earnings you have. If
Yeah.
you have to do a Gewerbeanzeige, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So those things. So Einzelunternehmer I recognize as the one that it has a bit more bureaucracy, but still
Mm-hmm.
don't not jumping into the UG or
Right.
the GmbH.
Okay. Okay. So, the other thing I wanted to know was, so you've spent a lot of time in academia, but also in industry. And how did that and did it influence your decision to start your own company?
Well, I realized that from my experience over time that there is a lot of new things that are being thought, but they are not being brought to the market in the proper way.
Hmm.
Sometimes even companies that are founded with founders that came from the academia, I realized that they have a lot of academian thoughts and know-how, but they cannot bring that to the business reality.
How come?
And well, I don't know. I think probably it's the mindset. Like probably it starts from the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
My experience is that I started after I graduated mechanical engineering. I started already directly in a company. So I did
Mm-hmm.
not go to research and make papers about it. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to implement, you have to show the results. You have to
Mm-hmm.
show the results from today to the next deadline you have. In
Yeah.
academia, in research, you have a lot of time to do it. You are being paid and you don't worry about much about the results because you are researching. And I think that's the challenge when you switch from research to business. Business, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, outside the academia
Mm-hmm.
sector. And my feeling is that there is still lacks gaps in communication. I realize that sometimes people don't communicate properly what they are bringing to the market. You are somehow not speaking the same language. with the end user. There's a lack of know-how also how the business work. It's like you have the solution, but you don't know the problem, and you're trying to sell the solution somehow. And a lot of researchers they have this problem, unfortunately. I have some colleagues that they might agree with me, some they might not. But the truth is that starting at Industrial Solar, we have the experience of doing both, because Industrial Solar also had a research sector, research department. I was working also in this research department, and I realized that even deadlines there were somehow like loose, flexible. You could play around with them and so on. And the end solution that you bring does not necessarily has to fulfill specific criteria as you have for the business. So my idea with Thermodemand is that I will bring clear solutions that can be implemented that has a value from the beginning already thought up. That is the idea.
So how did you know that there was a demand for solar thermal consulting?
Well, solar thermal, actually for heat, as I told you, heat is half of the energy used. And as heat is half of the energy used, and I know that solar thermal is available in most of the places that I target as work. We'll talk about that later. So there is space for a lot of that. There is a very important concept is that talking about heat and electricity is easier to being produced in somewhere else and with cables being brought to a factory. Okay. But heat is not. Heat, you have to produce it locally. You can transport fuel. That's what the companies do. So they bring fuel from somewhere else and then but the heat is not really. Even heat networks like district heating is still not a thing. I think maybe in the future it will become more popular. But for industry, district heating is nothing to talk about yet. There are maybe some few cases, but it is still not the case. So heat is the thing that has to be produced and consumed locally. How to produce and consume that locally. And that's where I come with Thermodemand to help on.
Okay. So let's talk about that. So you have this know-how, and obviously this is industry and business to business. How do you just go to factory? Like, how are you going to go to the market with this? Who are you going to go to and offer your services to, and how?
Well, so for example, I realized from also previous experiences that there is someone in these companies that they are all either commissioned to bring innovation to the company, or they are commissioned to reduce costs, or they are commissioned to achieve, for example, the net zero targets that the company has. How can they do that? They are doing it already with electricity because it's somehow simpler, but they are still struggling to do this with the heat sector. And that is where I come in play. So they can also find me. I'm setting up also now a website, but actually I have built a network that comes from the industry that I worked on, and it comes also from my previous experience at the last company I worked here in Germany. And I still have the local partners, and they liked working with me, and they said, if you start such a entrepreneurial path, I would like to join, because I trust that we will build and bring together a good solution for my clients. And they already have the clients working with other products they have in their portfolio. So my idea to go to the market is to have the two paths when I talk about industrial client, okay? Is to go either with the partner and then we work together for the case. For example, if I do a technical feasibility study, we propose the study together, we define the scope of works of each of us, and then we implement the study, and then both have both know-how and the commission on the costs of the study. There is then the case when the customer can come directly to me. If I can do that only myself, I do it. If I have to commission also a local partner, because most of my work is one of the points I wanted to mention, is most of my contact network is outside Germany. So if I want to commission that work in a country A, it's easier that I work with this local partner. Because, for example, if we have to do a site visit, then I can tell him, like, look at this and this and this and this. Let's collect this information, and then we can work together to make this study, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you like picked an industry? Like, so I think I know there's like chemicals or certain like heat intensive industries. Like,
hmm
are you just kind of anybody who uses a lot of heat?
Well, I made already also some studies before that was focused
Mm-hmm.
on industry assessment, industrial assessment. The energy intensive industries, there are different types, depend on the temperature level they work,
Mm-hmm.
depend on the number of industries they have. So for example, chemical plants, they are very energy intensive, but there are not so many. In
Mm-hmm.
comparison to food and beverage industry, they are
Okay.
less energy intensive, but there are many more,
Okay.
as an example. And my idea is, of course, to be open for both, but the
Mm-hmm.
communication and the message is different from one from the other one.
Mm-hmm.
The If I talk about the target markets, the food and beverage is probably one of the first.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is our textile, pharmaceutical, there is
Mm-hmm.
the chemical, as you said. There is also the mining industry. In some countries, they are super important, and they also need heat for their processes. There is like a manufacturing industry. It's different
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing types, like they call FMCG,
Mm-hmm.
fast-moving consumer goods. That
Mm-hmm.
they produce several things. They're not specifically like one type of product, and they also have factories worldwide. There is also different types of clients. Sometimes they have a local company in a country, only work in this country. Sometimes like multinationals, they
Mm-hmm.
have yeah, Niederlassungen, so
Mm-hmm.
subsidiaries in different countries. And I target some countries that I have more experience with, which then is where I started. For example, I have partners in Latin America, then I keep with
Mm-hmm.
them. In Southern Europe, then I keep working with them. In Africa, then I keep working with them.
Okay. Okay. So all over the world. That's a lot.
Yeah. Of course, I have to streamline the flux and the work because, of course, I cannot do everything, and
Yeah.
not everything is interesting or important. So then,
Yeah.
when we discuss this, with, for example, with a specific partner, then we know that we have to target the ones that are more likely to get the solution accepted or implemented.
Okay. So you alluded to this because I shared this question with you beforehand, but in this kind of industry, I would imagine there's like a lot of regulation and tape. Is that true?
Well, there is the idea that uh, for example, especially talking about the industry, I do business as usual. They prefer to
Mm-hmm.
do business as usual for a very good reason, because they have to meet their targets. And their targets, I mean production targets, and they are afraid of changing, touching anything that can affect that. So there is a fear of changes in that case.
Okay. Sorry. What do you mean business as usual?
Business as usual mean producing heat for their processes with the conventional fuel
So
source they have.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Got
yeah,
it. Got it.
that's
Got
the
it.
business as usual.
Okay.
And then when you come with a new solution, there is a technology risk that they don't know. There is
Mm-hmm.
also the availability risk that they also don't know, and it's also the integration risk, which they also normally don't know. Then you have to overcome those unknowns and then see whether the benefits overcome the unknowns and the risks that are behind it. And there's where, with Thermodemand, I come in.
Okay. And in all these different governments, like, are there, I don't know, these mirror collectors, I think you called them. So this is like heavy equipment or it's dangerous. Can you just like, I have a factory, you could just stick it out there in the back. Or do you have to like get permits and all this stuff?
Well, we have first to see the suitability of the technology. For example, when you
Mm-hmm.
talk about solar thermal collectors, you have to see if the area they have is big enough for making the size of the system that is adequate, or at least that covers a fraction of the energy. Then you have to be the suitability of this area, of course, and then there is also the matter of integrating that. So for example, if they say I have area, but then it's far away. For example,
Mm-hmm.
even if I talk about heat pumps, it's another renewable thermal technology, we
Mm-hmm.
can call it. But I have a heat source that is, I don't know, 200 meters away. Maybe it's not worth bringing that here, where I need this here, to put a heat pump here. or eventually it is. We have to analyze the case and then decide based on calculations, like calculating the where you can take this heat, where you can use this heat. And when you talk about, for example, solar thermal collectors, the area is one of the main constraints. So we always talk about how much, like how big is this area and how is the condition of this area. If it's ground, you have to analyze less things. But when you go talk about roofs, you have to analyze the load the roof can withstand. Regarding regulations to implement, there is less because you're normally not talking that you're doing something outside the factory. So as long as you fulfill the technical criteria for conventional boilers or conventional heat systems, you are covered on that. Solar thermal, sometimes they ask, like, but if the mirrors could make like a glare in the sky if you are close in airport. But then we also show the studies that show that this does not happen because of the condition, that the distance or the size or whatever concentration ratio we call it that we have in this system. And we have to overcome several unknowns and questions like these ones. But the regulations to prevent those installations, normally they don't exist. The permits exist, and sometimes they can really slower the process. But then knowing that from the beginning, that is the objective, to do this study and then analyze those conditions from the beginning, and then to plan the implementation already considering those for example, permits if they are required. In some countries, there is really no red tapes on this side.
Okay.
The red tapes more come from the company itself, like you are trying to implement something new, and then for example, the operation manager, they don't really want anything that will disturb their thing, but the maintenance manager maybe they want. And then we have to find a compromise, like how to make this, and also normally it's related to fear. Like I have the fear of disturbing my process. I have the fear of not fulfilling, or if this is not performing as I expect. I have the fear of like being, how to say, like being seen as like some stupid people that brought something new that doesn't work at all.
Yeah. There's a risk with the unknown.
Yeah.
Do sometimes, conversely, do regulations help? So, for example, are there countries where certain industries are under pressure to meet, like you said, certain net zero requirements by a certain year, so they have to do it, and then you can say, step in and say, haha, I have the solution for you?
Yes, there is, and there is also now, especially talking about Europe, now there is this the new plans from the European Commission that is trying to push and reduce the barriers. They are now approving that on the EU level, and they have to be translated to the government levels, to the country governments. Some countries are already facilitating that. For example, Germany, France, Spain has already some good steps ahead on that. Some countries are still behind. And there is also some countries are also pushing those innovations with subsidies or with tax reductions or with tax benefits, or somehow trying to push the companies, not only like pressing them to change, but also making them get some benefit back from that. I think there is a lot to do still, especially in the market that I'm working. Some countries, they think their markets are mature enough, and then when you see how many systems were implemented in the last year, I don't know, 5, 10, which is small for a country in any size, you could see. But this is things that has to go over time. And also on that point, I think comes the commission from development agencies. And that's why I put the Thermodemand providing services for them, because on one side you talk about end clients, when you have the need to change, and the other side you have the government pressure, and the development agencies come to help the governments to implement those strategies or build up a strategy. For example, how to decarbonize the industrial sector in country A. That is, for example, then I work with GIZ, we call it in Germany, GIZ.
What is that?
The German Development Agency for International Cooperation.
Okay.
Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit. I don't
Okay.
know if you've heard about them.
Now
They
I have.
are they are they are commissioned to do renewable systems, or to propose a renewable system in several countries around the world, and they have subsidiaries or people working in different countries from the German government as well, and they normally have bilateral agreements. For example, now there is a new one, for example, between Germany and Brazil, as an example now, because of the new governments, and they are more or less aligned with the strategies. They then have a commission to push, for example, in Brazil, there's a new one called sector coupling. So combining the electricity sector to the heat sector and trying to push that also for the industry. Then they have the need for experts and for know-how, how to do it. And that is where Thermodemand comes in play as well. It's not only talking about the specific technology itself in one company, but also thinking also on the macro side. And that can be also trainings that can be provided for specific staff in country A, B, or C, and so on. There's also other development agencies that work somehow in the same direction, like the UNDP, the development agency from the United Nations, the UNIDO as well. There are different ones. And as long as this know-how is not available everywhere, you cannot Google and find everything.
Yeah.
That is where Thermodemand comes in.
Okay. So this is interesting. So it's like you're not inventing any new technology. You just understand and can consult about it. So if I have this all correct.
Yeah.
So if I can ask, how much of your time as a new business is spent on like customer acquisition? Is that like my guess would be that would be the main thing you're doing now. Is that?
Well, that is the thing for the moment. As long as I have like a little big network and quite well connected, I'm actually taking the work that I'm having now from the network and helping the network to fulfill their commitments. So I'm not doing that much
Okay,
customization.
okay.
So I would say if I put in percentage, I would put less than 20% of my time now.
Okay, because it automatically comes. That's like great. So you
and also because of the know-how, and as long as the know-how is not available everywhere, you cannot like go and search for someone who knows what I'm telling you here, and then you find several profiles. And this know-how is built based on learning from the school and doing things, and that's where I think that I bring on.
So your potential challenge down the line will be more scaling to find people who have the know-how and skills and knowledge to like be part of your company.
To be part of the company, yeah. But for that, I'm already doing a very important step, which normally I know that many companies don't do, defining the processes for every service. So I'm doing that already now, before having the projects for some services. Because as long as I have the process defined, I know which data I have to collect, how I collect, how I process, and which outcome should bring in.
Okay.
So it's easier to get someone on board even without experience, like long experience on that, because my idea is to define processes that I can bring people, show the process, you have to do it, and then I can supervise them.
Yeah. I'm just curious, do you call that SOPs in your industry?
Not exactly. No.
There's a book like in the kind of digital tech online. I would apply to anybody. But it's called The E-Myth Revisited, and that's what every business owner says. You make your SOP, standard operating procedures, and you just start documenting everything you do. So like somebody could go tomorrow and you could bring somebody in and say like, look at the SOP for that. So that's essentially what you're building.
Yeah. And although I know that this is challenging to do everything at the same time, so then I spend some time, and I have also some internal deadlines that I put for defining those, and also to work on the projects, and also to work with the network, like build and work together with the network. So I'm doing all the things more or less in parallel. Sometimes, some weeks I have less work in one field, and then I give more priority to the other one.
Okay.
But this is super important because as long as I plan to grow, I have already planned to have, for example, I don't know, I cannot say I don't know because I have planned, but I plan to have, for example, 4 people in 2 years,
Uh-huh.
at least 4 people working for the company. Then, of course, I have to define the things that these 4 people can really perform
Uh-huh.
on the way that I'm expecting. And I'm expecting now from the beginning what people can do in 3 years. That's what
Okay.
my way of thinking.
I'm curious. I mean, this is you alluded to this before, like the kind of mindset in academia versus somebody who's worked in the field. I mean, a lot of this is like business. Like how did you learn the business side of this just from working at companies already?
Well, I learned from my first internship
Mhm.
because I started learning there because at that
Mhm.
time I was working the railroad sector, which is a very
Mhm.
challenging sector anywhere in the world
Mhm.
because the distances are long. So I learned from that especially when you want to bring something new, you have to change processes. You have to
Mhm.
know what people are doing. You have to know how they are doing, why they are doing, and then the business comes from that. So, for
Mhm.
example, I have to go to, for example, at that time workshops spread
Mhm.
around the country and say like, we're going to change the processes.
Mhm.
Whoa, but I'm working here 25 years and I always did this way. Why
Mhm.
do I have to change it?
Mhm.
And then we show how you change, you can improve, and then you can
Mhm.
reduce time, you can reduce failure, and so on and so forth. So this is actually somehow similar to what I started doing my internship when I did. It was 2004 when I started,
Mhm.
and that is my idea to bring to business. So first you have to understand, and my Thermodemand should do the same. Understand what are the things, the problems, the pain points, what are their challenges, their fears, and then propose something that actually overcome that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so as we wrap up, do you have any lessons learned or advice or things you would do differently that you can share with anybody listening?
Well, actually, especially founding a company here in Germany, I would recommend to get consulting, to go
Mm-hmm.
to people who did or to workshops. There's like the employment agency actually recommend you to do that. I
Mm-hmm.
was already on the way, and then I did not have
Mm-hmm.
the time to join one of the courses. But I recommend doing that because there is a lot to learn, especially depending on your level of German.
Mm-hmm.
Like you may spend more or less time if you want to found a company in Germany. And you have to understand if you are doing business only in Germany or also abroad, and you have to know the rules, how to do it. Um, so you can speed up your decision process. In my case, for example, I have the decision from the beginning that I wanted to go more or less in the direction of a limited liability
Mm-hmm.
company. Then after learning the challenges of doing that alone, not having to
Mm-hmm.
spend money and money and money to get more
Mm-hmm.
consultants to work for you for financial and tax purposes.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I think, one of the main challenges here in Germany to understand and to have this in a proper way. So my idea, my recommendation is get someone on board with you from the beginning if you want to found a company that can help you on these matters later,
Okay.
especially on the financial and tax part.
Okay. Was this like at the IHK or like where were these like organizations or these consultants or just private consultants?
There are both things. Like IHK
Mm-hmm.
also have a very, very strong network and content on these
Mm-hmm.
topics. I started having with them already, but I was already on the way, which when I
Mm-hmm.
already have decided what to do. So actually I learned about that later. But for example, one thing, if you want to start a company, you have to decide if you have to understand whether you go to IHK, whether you go to Handwerkkammer, whether you go to
Oh,
any other thing.
there's
So
all these. Yeah.
all these things you have to know. You have to know somehow, and this is not available everywhere. Of course, there is nowadays several platforms. I was using some of them when I got my knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
like Unternehmenswelt. There is the Grunde
Yeah.
platform, and so on.
Firma.de. Yeah. There's a bunch.
Firma.de.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they are trying actually to overcome this problem that I faced
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when I was founding the company. And actually, these things, I would recommend people who start to do the same at least. At
Yeah.
least, for
Yeah.
example, one 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 tip I got from the IHK is to use
Mm-hmm.
in Baden-Württemberg. There is now one portal that you can build up your business plan.
Mm-hmm.
You can build up from scratch, like from the canvas, to business plan complete with the financial plan, and so on. And this everything online with recommendations or with examples and so on. Is the Unternehmenswerkstatt die Baden-Württemberg, and this helped me a lot. But I was already in the second version of my business plan when I learned about it.
Okay.
Then I did the third version of my business plan. But if I knew that from the beginning, of course, I would have speed up the process and done that faster.
Okay. So seek out the resources that are out there to help you get started. From
and
the
also
beginning.
and also I can recommend something which I did, and I got the subsidy. I don't know if you call it subsidy or support from the government. This is called Grunduszuschuss.
Yeah.
And that because I also come from the unemployment and I wanted to start a new business. The employment agency said you fulfill the requirements. You just have to do the process. You have to get the business plan approved and so on. And I did it. I would recommend also to look also for that. If you are not coming from unemployment, you are not eligible. So sorry.
Yeah, I did it a million years ago and it was great. Highly recommend Grunduszuschuss.
It is great. And it's very important that if you want to go in that direction, it was my experience, and also a friend of mine is just starting the same process now. Get yourself prepared and show that you're really ready to do this step, go for your entrepreneurial career. Otherwise, your Vermittler, the people who assess you on the employment agency can also not be sure whether this is suitable for you.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I did it 10 years ago, and I actually quit my job, and I remember going through the process and getting it, and I told my husband, like, I can't believe they're giving me all this money when I quit my job. And he was like, you've been paying taxes here 10 years. Like, you paid into the system. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. But it really it made it easier and less scary to start out. So I'm glad that's still going on.
Yeah. And every business like this, we know, for example, as I don't have like a product that I'm putting on online to sell, I know that the cash flow will be irregular. So this is now from the beginning, and I accept that. And my idea is now to overcome this irregularity. This to choose helps me, but also I started several different small projects that I hope to get them on the midterm, and I hope that I can buffer this challenge, because that you still have to pay many things, even if you don't get any project, if you don't get any contract.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is really helpful. And I really appreciate having you on, or you coming on, Ira, and taking the time to explain everything to a layperson like myself. I know you mentioned you're getting your website going, but where can people find you, or where will they be able to find you?
Well, I will be launching this by the end of July. Thermodemand.de.
Okay.
Yeah. .de. But also, if they want, you can send the email that I have shared with you, irapua.ribeiro@thermodemand.de.
Okay.
There's where you can find me. Of course, also LinkedIn, as you found me, works well. I have quite a big network on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn also. I also have received requests in the past and so on. This works also well. If someone does not find me in any of these ways, they can find me there.
Okay. Well, that will all go in the show notes. And again, thanks so much for coming on, and look forward to checking out the new site.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity and for doing this great job. This is very good for the newcomers. I also recommend that for people who want to start to listen to the blog post that you are making.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks for listening. You can find this episode and all other episodes of the Germany Expat Business Show at my website at www.eleanormeyerhofer.com/podcast. That's www.eleanormayerhofer.com/podcast. See you next time.